The doctor cleared his throat and slowly folded his hands on the desk. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "The results are very clear." The words struck me before I even understood them. Across from him, I sat frozen in the stiff leather chair, my fingers gripping the edge of my purse so tightly that my knuckles turned white. For nearly 3 years, my husband Daniel and I had been trying to start a family. 3 years of hope. 3 years of disappointment. 3 years of pretending every holiday gathering didn't hurt when relatives asked when we planned to have children. Now, at 31 years old, I was finally about to get answers. Or so I thought. The doctor's office felt unusually cold. The air conditioner hummed above us, but the chill running through my body had nothing to do with the temperature. The doctor slid a stack of papers across the desk. "I'm afraid your chances of conceiving are extremely low." My heart stopped. "What?" I whispered. He looked down at the report. "Based on these findings, it would be very difficult for you to become pregnant naturally." I stared at him. Then at the papers. Then back at him. The room blurred. "No," I said. The word escaped before I could stop it. "There must be some mistake." The doctor shook his head. "I'm sorry." The sound of another person shifting in a nearby chair made me look to my right. My mother-in-law, Linda. She had insisted on coming with me. At the time, I thought it was kindness. Daniel had been forced to travel for work that morning, and Linda had immediately volunteered to drive me. "You shouldn't go through this alone," she had said. I had actually felt grateful. Now she sat beside me wearing a carefully arranged expression of concern. But something about it felt wrong. Very wrong. Her eyes seemed almost too calm. Too prepared. Like someone who already knew what was coming. A strange knot formed in my stomach. I looked back at the doctor. "What exactly is wrong with me?" He pointed at several complicated medical terms on the report. Words I barely understood. Hormone levels. Ovarian issues. Complications. Statistics. Percentages. Everything sounded like another language. All I truly understood was the conclusion. I couldn't give my husband the family we dreamed about. The realization crashed into me with overwhelming force. Tears filled my eyes. I thought about Daniel. About the way he smiled whenever he saw children playing at the park. About the nursery plans we discussed late at night. About the names we'd picked out. About every promise we'd made to each other. Gone. Just like that. Beside me, Linda reached over and placed a hand on my shoulder. Most people would have found the gesture comforting. I didn't. Her touch felt cold. Artificial. Performative. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly. The words sounded sympathetic. But something hidden underneath them made my skin crawl. "You've been through so much." I nodded weakly. I couldn't trust myself to speak. The doctor continued explaining treatment options, specialists, and possibilities, but his voice faded into background noise. I was drowning. The future I had imagined was slipping away in real time. Every sentence felt like another door closing. Eventually, the appointment ended. The doctor stood and offered a professional smile. "If you have questions later, don't hesitate to call." I nodded mechanically. Questions? I couldn't even think. Linda quickly gathered the paperwork before I could. "I'll hold these for her," she said. The doctor handed them over without hesitation. For a brief second, I noticed something strange. A look. A glance. The doctor and Linda exchanged the quickest eye contact imaginable. Barely a second. Maybe less. Yet it unsettled me. Something about it didn't feel normal. Then it was gone. The moment vanished. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, grief makes people see patterns that aren't there. Right? Linda helped me stand. The hallway outside the office seemed impossibly long. Every step felt heavier than the last. Patients passed by carrying clipboards and appointment forms, completely unaware that my world had just collapsed. By the time we reached the parking lot, I could barely breathe. Linda unlocked her car. "Daniel doesn't need all the details immediately," she said as we got inside. I turned toward her. "What?" She started the engine. "I'm just saying men handle these things differently." Her voice remained calm. Controlled. "You should give him time." I frowned. Something about the comment bothered me. Daniel is my husband. Of course he is. And he deserves the truth. For the first time, a flicker of irritation crossed her face. It disappeared almost instantly. But I saw it. Clear as day. Then she smiled again. That same perfect smile. The one that never quite reached her eyes. "Whatever you think is best." We drove in silence. Rain clouds gathered overhead. The sky darkened. As we pulled into my driveway, Linda handed me the medical report. I stared at the folder in my lap. The papers felt heavier than stone. I stepped out of the car and slowly walked toward the house. Behind me, Linda remained parked at the curb. Watching. Not leaving. Just watching. When I finally reached the porch and turned around, she was still there. A strange smile touched her lips. Not a comforting smile. Not a sympathetic smile. A victorious one. And for the first time all day, a terrifying thought entered my mind. What if the worst thing that happened today wasn't the diagnosis? What if the diagnosis itself was the lie? I sat on the front porch for nearly an hour after Linda drove away. The folder containing my medical report rested in my lap. I hadn't opened it again. I couldn't. Every time I looked at it, I felt as if someone were squeezing my heart. The neighborhood around me carried on as usual. Children rode bicycles down the street. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Sprinklers clicked rhythmically across freshly cut lawns. Life continued. Mine felt like it had stopped. The late afternoon sky had darkened into shades of gray, and a cool breeze swept through the quiet suburban street. I wrapped my arms around myself and stared blankly at the driveway. Daniel would be home soon. I didn't know how I was supposed to tell him. How do you tell the person you love most that the future you've both dreamed about may never happen? How do you watch hope disappear from someone's eyes? My chest tightened. Tears slipped down my cheeks again. I quickly wiped them away. But they kept coming. Then I heard a voice. "Ma'am?" I looked up. Sheriff Michael Hayes stood near the sidewalk separating our properties. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him. He had lived next door for almost 5 years. A tall man in his early 50s with silver beginning to appear in his dark hair. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades solving problems and protecting people. He wasn't wearing his official uniform today. Just jeans, boots, and a simple button-down shirt. Yet he still looked every bit like a sheriff. Concern filled his face. "You all right?" I forced a smile. The kind people give when they're definitely not all right. "Just having a rough day." He studied me for a moment. Years of law enforcement had clearly taught him how to recognize lies. "That rough, huh?" I laughed weakly. The laugh immediately turned into another wave of tears. Embarrassed, I covered my face. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." He stepped closer. "Mind if I sit?" I shrugged. A few moments later he sat on the porch steps a respectful distance away. Neither of us spoke immediately. The silence felt surprisingly comfortable. Eventually he nodded toward the folder resting on my lap. "Bad news from a doctor?" I looked down. The folder had the clinic's logo clearly visible. I sighed. "Apparently." He nodded slowly. "My wife went through health scares before she passed." The sadness in his voice was unmistakable. "I know those folders." I swallowed hard. They told me I probably can't have children. The words sounded just as horrible out loud as they had inside the doctor's office. Sheriff Hayes remained silent for a moment. Then he said something unexpected. Did they explain how they reached that conclusion? I frowned. What do you mean? Did they show you the actual test results? I blinked. No. Did they walk you through the numbers? Not really. His expression changed slightly. The same expression detectives probably wore when they noticed something unusual. Can I ask who the doctor was? I told him. His eyes narrowed. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to notice. Interesting. A chill moved through me. What? He hesitated. Then carefully chose his words. I've heard complaints. My stomach tightened. What kind of complaints? He looked at the folder again. Mind if I take a quick look? I stared at him. Part of me thought it sounded ridiculous. Another part suddenly wanted answers. Without speaking, I handed him the report. He opened it. His eyes moved across the pages. Once. Then again. His expression grew more serious with each passing second. What is it? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled a pair of reading glasses from his pocket and continued studying the paperwork. A knot formed in my stomach. What do you see? Finally, he pointed to a section near the bottom of one page. Do you know what this code means? I shook my head. No. I do. My heart began racing. He tapped the page again. This isn't a fertility diagnosis code. I stared at him. What? It shouldn't even be attached to this report. I leaned closer. My pulse thundered in my ears. What are you saying? I'm saying something here doesn't make sense. The air suddenly felt colder. He flipped to another page. Then another. Then another. The deeper he looked, the more troubled he became. Finally he exhaled slowly. I've seen altered documents before. My breath caught. The world seemed to freeze. What? His eyes met mine. Directly. Seriously. No accusations yet. But there are inconsistencies all over this paperwork. I felt dizzy. Inconsistencies? He nodded. The formatting changes. He pointed. The signature doesn't match the electronic timestamp. Another point. These lab references are from different reporting systems. Another. This page was generated on a different date than the others. I stared at him in disbelief. The reports suddenly looked different. No longer like a death sentence. More like a puzzle. A puzzle someone didn't want solved. My hands began shaking. Are you telling me this report is fake? I don't know. His answer came immediately. Honest. Professional. But I am telling you that something isn't right. My heartbeat pounded harder. Images flashed through my mind. The doctor's nervous behavior. The strange eye contact. Linda's overly calm reaction. The smile she'd given me before leaving. The victorious smile. Suddenly it all came rushing back. Every detail. Every strange moment. Every uncomfortable feeling. Sheriff Hayes noticed the change in my expression. What? I looked toward the street. Toward the direction Linda had driven away. Then back at him. My mother-in-law came with me. He waited. She insisted. His eyes narrowed slightly. Okay. And she seemed to know what the doctor was going to say before he said it. For several seconds neither of us spoke. The wind rustled the trees above us. A storm was approaching. I could feel it. Not just in the weather. In everything. Sheriff Hayes slowly closed the folder. Then handed it back to me. I think you need a second opinion. I stared at the papers. The same papers that had destroyed me only hours earlier. Now they looked completely different. Not like proof. Like evidence. Evidence that someone might have lied. Someone might have manipulated my future. Someone might have tried to destroy my marriage. And for the first time since leaving the doctor's office, something replaced the grief crushing my chest. Hope. Small. Fragile. Dangerous. But real. Because if Sheriff Hayes was right, then I wasn't standing at the end of my story. I was standing at the beginning of the truth. And somewhere behind that truth was a person who had gone to extraordinary lengths to convince me that I could never have a child. The only question now was why. And deep down, I already feared I knew the answer.